and welcome back, everybody, to episode 11 of the HamRadioConcepts podcast. I am Eric KJ4YZI, and we are doing this podcast on a Sunday as normal. I can't seem to get myself to record this ahead of time, so we do it pretty almost live. It would almost be live if I had a little more time. It would be recorded days ago. But my name is Eric KJ4YZI. We have a special guest today, and this is episode 11. So somebody wrote me an email today and said, "Hey Eric, why did you change from YouTube videos to podcast?" I did not. All I did, or actually what they said was, "Why did you choose the podcast bandwagon?" I just wanted to be another medium on podcasting along with the videos. I haven't stopped doing videos. I'm still doing those, and I'm just throwing into podcast and all the daily activities that I do. You can listen to this on any podcast platform that is popular that you listen to your podcast, like Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, Audible, Podchaser, Deezer, and so many more. You just search HamRadioConcepts podcast. HamRadioConcepts is all one word. And for that traditional AM shortwave radio feeling across the world, you can listen on 9.395 megahertz at 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time from WRMI in Okeechobee, and 5.950 megahertz, and that typically faces Europe and North Africa. People in the USA, they listen to that as well. So the HamRadioConcepts podcast, I didn't think I would make it to episode 11, but I'm so intrigued by the guests that I have and what we talk about, and I learned it's not for me. This show is for us. So this week, I have a friend that we tried doing this podcast a few episodes ago with some other people, and I'm actually glad that we had a few technical difficulties because now I get him one-on-one, and this is going to be even more interesting for me. Guys, I've said this before in many YouTube videos and podcasts, youth. We need youth on the air, youth on ham radio. I tend to take a very personal and prioritized method to youth, because those are the ones that, there's a lot of people on ham radio that are out there that are in older age, 50, 60, 70. In fact, my demographics on YouTube do show that my audience is, 45 to 90 years old. But what happens when those people are gone? The youth are what this hobby is going to be in the future. And I embrace that. And I try to implore everybody to do what they can to be there with the youth and to help the youth. And I have a friend here, Collin Holdsworth, K0NNK. Let's welcome Colin to the podcast. Hello, Colin. The show is yours. We're gonna talk about Colin and what he does for the youth in ham radio. And he seems very bright. And I've read some emails. I've checked out some of his things. We're gonna let Colin introduce himself and talk about, guys, listen to this. If you're a ham radio operator and you've been doing this 30, 40 years, you've been doing this before I was born, think about somebody like Colin, who's been doing this now a few years, but this is the future, guys. Go ahead, Colin, pick it up.
All right, well, like you said, the name is Colin. The call sign again is Kilo 0 November Kilo. And when I got my vanity, I didn't know it at the time. I didn't think a conch in my call sign. My grandmother, when I had a QSL card and didn't have the slash O or the /0, she said conch, and I was like, that's when I first. So that's where I got my call sign from. And I run a youth club here in Elkader, Iowa, but it's not a local club. It's a club that has a few members across the world.
So Colin, and the way this podcast is, like I said, it can go anywhere. So I do not script this. We haven't talked about anything for this podcast. I understand what you do, but we didn't talk about anything. In fact, I just emailed you 24 minutes ago and said, "Hey, you ready to do this?" So I have questions, and I want to learn from this, and I want people to learn from this as well. So the emails that I got from you are Digital Youth Net Group. And I've seen the newsletter that comes into my email and about what you do and advertising what you've come together. The mic is yours. Listen, tell everybody what you do. Let's start from here. What got you into ham? That's what I need to do. I need to organize this. What got you into ham radio? How old are you? Ham radio. How old are you? Where do you live? what interests you in this hobby? Why did you do it? What are the modes and the bands that you're on? What is the gear? Go ahead, Colin.
Well, it's quite a bit of a story. So, back when I used to live in Texas, I was my dad's been real interested in the radio, not ham radio to be specific, but radio in general, like FM radio. He always wanted to run a radio station. So I guess it really started when I visited a low power FM radio station in the southwest Houston, Sugar Land area, I believe. And so that was real fun. And I guess I basically grew from there. I always wanted to run a radio station. I was real young too. But anyways, after that, a few years later, we moved up here in Iowa. And there was a neighbor. They moved, but there's a neighbor. And he said when he was overseas, he had a ham radio. He wasn't a licensed operator. He was doing this for the military. And he used to receive a bunch of stuff. And he kind of told me a bit about it. And so my interest grew from there. Eventually, in early 2021, I bought Ham Radio Prep. And it's pretty cool. There was a few opportunities to take my license, and I'm kind of glad I took it a little late. First, it was in the early spring, but we had a snowstorm, and so we couldn't go. The roads were too dangerous. So then there was one in the summertime, but the computer wasn't working, so it didn't work very well for me studying. And then eventually on August 7, 2021, I passed my license at Central City, Iowa. There was a ham fest there for the Cedar Rapids area, but it was located in Decatur, Iowa. So I passed my license, and I bought a few things at the ham fest.
So I did not know that, Colin. You have been licensed since August of last year, right?
Yes, that is correct. I passed it on August 7th, 2021.
Well, congratulations. I didn't know it. You know, the way that the emails and the newsletter and everything come out, I thought you've been doing this for years, buddy. And you have a very structured way that I don't even have. I mean, I can tell you, it seems like when I talked to you the first time and then reading the emails and stuff that you're very structured and you have a passion for this. So you've only been licensed since August of last year. How old are you, Colin?
12.
Okay, so you're 12. So as a 12-year-old, what does this amateur radio hobby, which can be a service, and we can, everybody who might be listening knows that this is a hobby, but it is a service. What does this mean to you right now at 12, Colin? What does this do for you? And you've been licensed now, let's see, November, December, September, October, let's call it 8-9 months. What does this hobby, what has it done for you so far?
Well, first, I guess you could say I made a few friends, youth and not youth, on DMR. I started with FM, and we had local repeaters, but they were only like 15 miles away. But we live in a hole here in Decatur, Iowa, so we can't go and reach my local repeaters without building a Yagi and going up the hill and beaming it towards the repeaters to do stuff. But I started with FM, and then I won a DMR radio from Bridgecom Systems, and that opened DMR to me, but I didn't have a hotspot. And so on Christmas, which was just a few months ago, I got a hotspot. And so I did a lot of DMR. That was my only thing I could really do. I didn't have a general class. So eventually, here recently, it was only about a little over 2 weeks ago, I passed my general, and I've been doing a little bit of HF work. I have a ICOM IC720A, very, very ancient radio, but it's built like a tank.
It's built like a tank, you're right.
And to a 20-meter dipole that I built back even before I was it was a little after I was a ham radio operator, but I had a neighbor and he had an antenna analyzer, and he let me borrow that. So the main things I do in amateur radio, I do a little bit of FT8, SSB, and DMR, and occasionally FM. But anyways, I kind of got sidetracked on your question there. I think I went a little off your direct question there.
It's okay. It's okay. Go on.
All right, and so what I do with my group, I formed this group, I'd say around January. I started it with the DMR thingy. And so I found out that there's actually quite a bit of youth in amateur radio on DMR. There's like a layer, WX4BED. He was one of the first ones I met on DMR. Well, not the first ones I met, but one of the first youth I met on DMR. And that was pretty cool. And then there's a few others. One of which is in Finland, but I found out that there's actually a bit of youth on DMR, so I thought maybe we could form a net. So my net's on Talk Group 96, and so I decided to form a net. We have around 3 to 6 check-ins, but not a whole lot, but it connects us. And some are youth and some are older. But anyways, so that's what started the whole group. We started the net called the Digital Youth Net sometime in January, and it became official in late January. But eventually that happened, and in about February, somewhere around there, I said, why don't we form kind of a little bit of a club that kind of separates us from the entire world. That it's kind of hard to explain, but I felt a group was pretty cool. And so I formed a group with just a few members, and it wasn't an official group, but we have a club call sign or anything. It was just called the Digital Youth Net Group, and it was interesting. And I found out about this thing called Discord from the CIYAA, which is a youth club here in Iowa. It's in the central Iowa area, so that's a neat little local club. Mine's international, and I decided to form a Discord, and so I formed a Discord group for our club, and we had a few people on there. Eventually, most of my main people to our club all got a Discord account and went on there. So we have a decent amount of people on our Discord server, around 25. But anyways,
let me ask you this, Colin. Let me interrupt you and ask you this. So, because I like to ask these questions because I want to learn and I have an interest. So, you started. Let's go back now. You said there's quite a bit of youth in ham radio, and what I've always tried to say, or I'm lack of words here. What I've tried to promote is that the youth are the future of ham radio. So you said you got on DMR. Now I'm going to ask this question. There are a bunch of people out in ham radio that are probably older and they're probably not so friendly, whatever. How do you feel that if there's other people that are listening that are younger, or people that have kids? Sometimes I've heard, and it really aggravates me when a younger person like yourself would get on a frequency or a mode or a band, and they'd start talking, and then you would hear older people that feel, well, here's a youngin' in here, and they're, and they don't treat him or her the same way. What do you feel that how is it accepting the hobby? I mean, when you get on DMR and you talk as a youth, do you feel that other people are like, hey, you got a lot to learn. You're a youth, so just sit back and listen. Or do you hear people tell you, wow, this is great that you're on here. This is, I'm glad to talk to you, and I hope you do more. What's been your experience?
Well, my experience has been pretty good. I guess you could say I'm lucky. I did receive an email that wasn't so friendly, but I was like, whatever. He was asking me to turn my mic gain up, and I was like, whatever. I know some other people that have some slightly worse experience.
Yeah, you can't listen, Colin. You can't please everybody out here, man. I mean, I get people emailing me every day about my podcast and my YouTube that are telling me I'm doing it wrong, but you just do what you do, you know?
Yeah, there's a YouTube channel that's bashes those people and deletes all the comments and stuff. And anyways, like I said, I haven't really experienced much of that. A lot of people they think I'm a YL on a DMR, so they don't know. And then other people ask me if I'm young or not. They don't like. There's only been a few people that have been really wowed by the fact. But there's this it's a youth center, not a youth club, but a center in Illinois. And when these girls come on and start talking, it makes most people on DMR, they feel nice and relieved that there's going to be some youth amateur radio. And I myself hasn't experienced very much of hate, but I know someone who has worse luck than me out of that. Go ahead.
Yeah, exactly. When the reason I'll tell you, Colin, the reason I started my ham radio YouTube channel was because I was licensed since 2005, but I was on CB radio since I was 9 years old. I'm 38 now. So when I got into ham radio at about 18, 19, I was probably about 20. Yeah, I was about 20. And, the internet was not like it was today. I mean, we barely had YouTube. I think YouTube was just being started. Nobody thought about doing that. If I did, I probably would have been rich today. But people would have, I'd ask questions on repeaters as a 20-year-old, and I would, post on forums on different websites, and I'd say, hey, how do I take this antenna and make it do this? Or how can I adjust this to make this do this and more power, this and that? And I didn't understand what was happening. I didn't understand the difference between 5 and 6 watts. I thought 1 watt, wow. But, difference between 5 and 6 watts is not noticeable at all. But I would ask those questions, and people would just throw me out and say, hey, you know what? You don't know what you're talking about. Just go buy this, do this, and call it a day. Stop asking these questions. You're trying to make something that's not going to happen. And I get discouraged. So then years later, once I taught myself, I made a YouTube channel and I said, hey, I could check this stuff out with people, and I'm not an expert, but that way nobody can ever, if anybody ever asks me a question, I'm not going to be mean to them like I was when I first got started. So have you had you've, and I don't mean this in any wrong way. You've got a lot to learn. You're new into the hobby, and it seems like you're right on track with the technology we have today and the resources like YouTube and podcasts and everything. It sounds like you have the wealth of information for you for all kinds of stuff. But do you feel that in this hobby, in this day and age, with YouTube and everything, are you struggling to find answers or to learn and build and teach yourself other things? Or does it seem now, compared to when I was 20, how does it seem to you when you want to learn stuff and say, hey, there's new digital mode, or I want to build this antenna, or this and that? What is it like in this day and age compared to when I got my license, or somebody that was 40 years ago when they had to go to people's houses and burn radios out trying to figure it out? What do you think now, learning at your age in this day and age on ham radio?
Well, definitely it's a different. YouTube is my favorite resource. I can usually Google something. Usually there's some answer out there, and basically all my knowledge, I was watching ham radio YouTube videos in early 2021 because I was interested, and that really helped me kind of know a lot right when I got my license, instead of just having to learn while I'm growing in amateur radio. Of course, I'm still learning a lot while I'm growing in amateur radio since then, but YouTube videos really, really helped me. Yours, Ham Radio Crash Course, all the YouTubers out there. There's so many of them.
Yeah,
anyway.
You got Josh Ham Radio 2, or no, Jason Ham Radio 2.0, Josh Ham Radio Crash Course, you got K0NNK and David Kassler and DX Commander and all kinds of stuff. I watch Colin. I learn a lot too, man. I am not an expert. I am still learning to this day. If I want to learn something or check out a new mode I haven't been, or a new radio, some of the other YouTubers have it already, and I go to YouTube and I learn about it. So if it wasn't for YouTube and me learning this stuff, I would, I'm way behind. I mean, there's some stuff now that I'm just getting into that people have gotten into for a year now. So YouTube, we are blessed to have YouTube in this hobby in this day and age.
Yeah, as I was saying, yeah, I'm subscribed to the DX Manor, K0NNK, and all those other YouTubers. Anyways, so usually I can just Google something and it's there, or there's a YouTube video about it. Now, some things, because a few things I want to go into deeply, but it's kind of hard to do it, is like linking talk groups to other talk groups and just stuff. It's too much to go over right now. But YouTube's my main resource, and there's QRZ, Ham, and all those other good websites, DX Zone, and they're nice websites, and you can always just Google something. So that's a big plus for me in this day and age, is our technology when it comes to YouTube and a lot of these modes and bands, and it's kind of hard to explain everything, but it was better than before. Anyways.
Well, let me ask you this, Colin. So it seems that you've mentioned several times DMR. For those listening who may not know, DMR, digital mobile radio, it's like it's a digital form factor in ham radio where you could take a handheld at 5 watts. For those who are listening who aren't ham radio operators, and you may think that Colin and me are way above your head. Wow, I'm never going to get that. No, you can go on Amazon, eBay, Bridgecom, a lot of different places, and you can order a radio these days that will do VHF and UHF, analog and digital DMR for probably $40-$50 on Amazon. And there's some that are more expensive, some that are less expensive. But with a handheld like this and a local repeater or a hotspot, and that could be a whole other topic on another podcast, you can connect to people across the world with a handheld. You may think in ham radio, if you're new to it, that you have to have this great big tower and this great big antenna and all these tens of thousands of dollars. And that's not the case anymore. You can do that if you want to, but there's a lot of avenues of radios and manufacturers. A lot of them come from China, the cheaper ones. And but you know what? You can get on the radio and you can talk across the world and meet many people on DMR or D-Star or C4FM or even analog, single sideband, AM, FM. There's a lot of stuff. And before I keep going, Colin, I'll say this I may have just blown a lot of people's minds right now. And Colin said this in the beginning, if you're interested in getting into ham radio, I want to plug my sponsors here who help me make these podcasts and stuff. HamRadioPrep.com. HamRadioPrep.com is, you said you use that, right, Colin?
Yeah, it's probably the best for me, mainly because of the videos. That's my big thing, is I like videos.
Well, yeah, that's exactly it, because back in the day, you had to get a book and you had to study and memorize these answers, and you may have not understood. HamRadioPrep.com, if you use the code EricPodcast20, all one word, EricPodcast20, you'll save 20% on any course you buy. If you buy the technician course, you can start and learn about what we're talking about in ham radio. You can learn about why you're calling CQ, or how to make your first contact, what is an antenna, and stuff like that. HamRadioPrep.com is the easiest way, I think, in this day and age. As I just asked Colin, Colin may have not known about 15 years ago or 10 years ago, I had to read a book over and over and over again until I memorized the answers. Ham Radio Prep does it in a way with videos and games and quizzes and brain quizzes to make sure that you understand what you're learning instead of just memorizing questions. So if you go to hamradioprep.com and you use the code EricPodcast20, you'll save 20% on any course you buy. You can do technician, general, and extra, and you can be a ham radio operator like me and Colin. Thanks to my sponsors for helping me out doing this, because it's a lot of effort to make these videos. So Colin, let me throw this out. So as I just said with DMR, what is your radios? What do you have for gear? Tell us what you have for gear and your antennas. What bands you're on mostly, what HF rig you have if you have one, and what modes and stuff that you primarily operate and why.
Alright, well, first I'll move with the gear. I don't have too much. I have quite a few HTs. Most of them are analog. So my first radio was a Baofeng, of course. A Baofeng BF F8 HP, so it's the 8 watt model. A little bit more expensive than the UV5R. And then I bought these things called the Radiality GA510, and they were doing a really good deal on it. The radios are 10 watts, and their normal price was $70, but I could get 2 radios and a Baofeng speaker mic for like $65. So I thought that was a dang good deal. I want to get that. And so they're nice little HTs. They give a little bit more power than your regular UV5R. So I use those when I'm using my Yagi and trying to hit DX repeaters. And so that's what I use. And I have, when I went to the HamFest, I already had my Baofeng radio. But when I went to the HamFest, I bought this, TYTMD380 is what it was. And so I didn't have much use for it. It just stayed there not doing anything because I didn't have a hotspot and I didn't know too much about DMR and I didn't really research a lot about DMR. So eventually I won the Anytone radio because I started getting to Bridgecom and watching their live streams and getting more into DMR eventually. Then I won one of their radios and that really, I was like, I got this expensive radio, this Anytone radio. I'm actually holding it right here in my hands. It's turned down right now. But eventually I got that and I got on DMR. And this really, really, really nice ham, he lives in Wisconsin. We're close to the Mississippi River. He lives in Wisconsin. He let me borrow and use the ICOM IC728 along with a cool little power supply. So he's a nice ham there in Wisconsin with a nice group of guys on that repeater over there. It's the Hidden Valley Amateur Radio Group is what I call it. So that's what I'm using, and I have a homemade 20-meter dipole. I'm thinking about getting a DX Commander antenna, and so sometimes I do FT8. There's this thing called HamRadioConcepts, and it's really cool because if you live in an apartment or you live in a place where you can't put a big antenna or you don't have the money to simply buy a $200 antenna or even a $500 radio, which I wouldn't have been able to get on HF if it wasn't for him letting me borrow his HF radio. You can use this thing called Remote Ham Radio. It's remotehamradio.com, and if you're an adult, you can pay to use other people's radios. You pay a little fee, and you can use other people's radios with pretty good setup. If you don't have the money or you live in an apartment or something. So you can get good use out of your general license that way. And so there's a free youth program on there. And so I do a little bit of FT8 on that. But I use signal sideband on my primary HF radio, which is at my QTH.
So you brought up a good point. So I have had a lot of people, and I have made videos on antennas that are good for apartment use because there's a lot of people in HOAs or apartments that can't have an antenna. And I get that. I would never live in that situation, but some people don't have a choice. Or even people that are in, staying with a friend or living with a friend and they're not going to tell their friend, hey, I'm going to put an antenna outside. The friend might not have any idea about why they're doing this. But give us a little more about remote ham, because I understand it, about using someone else's radio over the internet and using their radio. But tell us a little more for those who want to know, how do I get on remote ham? Tell us, Colin.
All right, so this the website is HamRadio.com, all one word typed into a search engine, RemoteHamRadio.com. So basically, on your computer or smartphone, it's a better interface with the computer. You have a waterfall, and you get to use amplifiers and all that good stuff. It decodes FT8 for you. And if you download a piece of software, you can do some other stuff. But that's kind of confusing. I'll try to straighten it out. So remote ham radio is where you take a mobile device connected to the internet, and there's a radio station like there's a HF radio station connected to the internet as well. And so with your phone or computer, you can talk and do HF radio through your computer, but you're still using HF. It's not like you're using your computer to talk voice over internet protocol. You're still using HF, and so you can go and it travels through the internet to the HF radio, and the HF radio says and receives what you're doing. And so it's pretty cool, and some of which have big antennas, others just have dipoles at a decent amount of feet. And a lot of them have 100 watts, some of them have amplifiers and all that good stuff. But there's 3 different parts of it. They got the Premium DX, the Remote DX, and then the Youth program. All of them, which costs a little bit of money. I think it's like maybe 9 cents hour or minute, something like that, to use it. And so the Premium DX is more expensive than the Remote DX. If you're a Premium DXer, you get Remote DX and all the Premium DX stations, and then the Remote DX, it's cheaper, and you can get on quite a few HF stations with that. They have like 10, 15 stations on pretty much each one. Anyways, and then they have the Youth program, which the Youth program is free. I believe it's not 18 under. I believe it's 23 under, which is kind of cool. And you give them your amateur radio license. It said you had to do some type of birth certificate or something, but I did it without it, and they registered me. So anyways, I get on that occasionally and do some FT8 and SSB on there. But I also still use my HF radio at the house. So it's RemoteHamRadio.com.
Well, very, very clean and clear explanation. You know, you got to thank these people that volunteer to put this stuff up so that somebody can remote into their radio across the world and use their radio. And like you said, it's not your voice and communications are still going over ham radio frequencies. You're not using some sort of IP connectivity. So that's the big thing. But some people, you know, I'll tell you a story, Colin. When hotspots first came out, I was very against them. I said, I hate this. I don't want nothing to do with it. I will not make a video on it. I hated it because they originally had the dongles coming out and some other stuff. And the reason I said this was because I thought that, you know, I mean, the dongles, you'd plug into your computer USB port with a microphone and headset on your computer and talk over digital forms like D-Star and stuff and not have any radio or an antenna in your hand. And I heard somebody on a D-Star reflector years ago, and he was a youth, and he must have been 14, 15 years old, and he said, hey, this is my first radio. I just got this. I'm on D-Star. What should I do with HF radio now? I'm saving for HF. I'm about to buy one. And one person came on and said, do not waste your time. You're throwing your money away. There's nothing on HF. This is that. You need to stick with this, and that's it. And then the other person that came on said, listen, I don't need to buy a radio or learn how to build an antenna. I got my ham license last year, and I'm going to work everybody in the world on my smartphone through an app, and then I'm going to be done, and I'm just going to move on to the next hobby. So that was a big problem for me because I thought, That is not the way I want people to learn ham radio. Then, the hotspots came out, and then you use, me, I'm tradition, Colin. I like to have a D-Star radio in my hand through a hotspot that may be on D-Star, which comes out on a reflector somewhere else. Now, I may not use that all the time, but, if I'm out of my local area with the D-Star repeater, I can still talk on RF. But I had a big problem with that in the beginning. So then they came out with this app, Peanut, I think it is, if it's still there or whatever. There was a couple apps, and people would say the same thing. Wow, I don't need to buy a radio or learn how to build an antenna. I can get my technician class and talk all over the world and never have to use a radio. At your age, Colin, what do you think about the statements I just told you? If someone said to a youth, oh, wait a second, don't go out and buy a radio or do antenna. You're younger. Just get this app, do this. Don't ever buy a radio, and you can talk all over the world. What do you think about that?
Well, the digital stuff with the smartphone, in my opinion, they're tools. I'm going to go back to me talking to someone. It's a youth. You need to get the amateur radio license. It was at the youth center I was talking about earlier. And I told him, or her, I should say, I told her, there's these two apps that I know. One is Echolink, and we all know, most people know what Echolink is. And then there's DroidStar. Echolink is a VoIP. You can access repeaters over the internet and conference servers, which are plainly VoIP, voice over the internet. And so I told him, if you want to do that, you can start with that and not spend much money. But over time, I would recommend you actually buying an RF radio, an RF, or even an HF radio. Because, I do think, I like to use any tone radio RF going into a hotspot. And when I first heard about DroidStar, I was like, why are they doing that? But it's a tool. It's a tool, I should say. I wouldn't like to live my amateur radio life with just using a smartphone. I think it's neat that you can use an antenna with an HF radio as well. But they're tools. The HF radio, in my opinion, is more fun than talking to a smartphone. It's like you're making a phone call, almost. So some people think that using smartphones is the best thing ever. Other people don't.
Well, that's a great way of putting it, Colin. So a tool, because I always said now to continue on my rant here, I eventually had hotspots and eventually I've still never downloaded the Peanut app, never downloaded the Zello for ham radio. It's there and it can be there, but like I said, or like you just said, it's a tool. And what I said was, if let's say you're traveling and you're in an airport, the last thing you want to do is sit there with a walkie-talkie and start talking and trying to find a local repeater or set your hotspot up. You might look a little weird, and to this day and age, because in an airport they wouldn't know what we were doing, or they may say, hey, you can't do this. But you can use an app to get connected to people while you're waiting for an airline, or let's say you're on a this and that, or a cruise ship, and whatever. It's a tool. Absolutely, you're right. And but I always said, don't think that is what ham radio is. Like you said, Echolink. I haven't checked into Echolink in years. I used to use Echolink. I set up an Echolink simplex node about 16 years ago. And this thing was a 50-watt transmitter, and this thing would read out the time, the severe weather impacts if there was a severe thunderstorm warning, it would broadcast, and people can go in locally in the town and receive this and transmit through Echolink, which would be bridged to the National Weather Service or whatever. I forgot how I even did that, but Echolink, I've had people say that, I'm disabled, I'm in an apartment, there's no option for me. There is an option for you. Colin just told you about, different options for, remote ham, and you can watch my videos and see options for ham radio antennas that would work in an HOA or a balcony. So those options do exist. So let me say this real quick, Colin. For those who are listening, if you're new to the podcast, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, Audible, Deezer, Podchaser, so many more. Wherever you get your podcasts, go online and type in Ham Radio Concept Podcast. Ham Radio Concepts is all one word, and listen to the podcast. And you can also go to YouTube and type in Ham Radio Concepts and get my videos I've been doing for years. And if you're wanting that AM shortwave feeling, in fact, Colin said he's going to listen tonight on AM and give me a signal report in Iowa. Iowa or Illinois?
It's Iowa.
Iowa, I was right. 9.395 megahertz and 5.950 megahertz. And if you're stuck on the what are we going to watch tonight, or you're stuck on YouTube, turn it off. Go turn on your radio if you have one and listen to those. And listen to a podcast once in a while on shortwave. There's a lot of information you can get on shortwave. I hope that WRMI keeps letting me buy these spots. Thank you to all my Patreon donators at patreon.com/HamRadioConcepts. You guys are putting your hard-earned donations to work by paying the electric bill at the shortwave station and the podcast platforms to make me do this, because I just hope that we can all learn something from this and have a little bit different structure than the YouTube videos. So, Colin, let me ask you this now. So I think I asked you this before, but we kind of got sidetracked, or like I said, it goes wherever it wants. Why do you choose DMR? I haven't heard you once say D-Star or P25 or C4 FM, Yaesu System Fusion. You keep saying DMR. Have you used any other digital modes? And do you like DMR more than those, or is it the most inexpensive way to get in? What gravitates you to DMR?
All right, well, there's D-Star and Yaesu System Fusion. Yeah, I've heard of those. I've actually kind of, sort of, not truly, not technically, but sort of talked on Yaesu System Fusion and Wires X and stuff like that. So DMR kind of is different from those other modes. DMR seemed to have DMR. I can, with my Anytone radio, I can see who's on there and what city and state they're in, including their name and DMR ID. That's a lot. So I can view quite a few things on DMR with the latest DMR radios that have a nice screen on them. Yaesu System Fusion, I think all you can really view is their call sign and name and stuff like that. But DMR and Yaesu System Fusion, a lot of the Yaesu System Fusion stuff is linked to FM repeaters and stuff like that. And that's a cool thing. You can use internet and go over repeaters like Echolink. And I've been on AmericaLink before. I actually found a DMR talk group linked to AmericaLink. And I mainly say DMR because that's my experience, and I haven't done much on the Yaesu System Fusion. I mean, I've been on a few other Yaesu System Fusion reflectors or rooms, whatever you want to call them. DMR is talk groups is what they call them. But they're interesting, and DMR seems to be slightly more in the technology. I know D-Star, I saw your video on the you can send images. I don't think you can do that on DMR, but both have their advantages. DMR is mainly talk to people, and I know D-Star and whatever you were doing with that one thing, that was pretty cool. You could send images. I don't think you can do that over DMR, so different advantages for the different modes.
Well, Colin, I'd invite you to the episode I want to do soon, because I have a few people. Actually, you were going to be on the episode with me and Bob K6UDA. He's a System Fusion guy, but he's also got DMR and D-Star. I am a D-Star person. I've had all the modes. I sold my Fusion radios. I sold my DMR smartphone, finally, my R-Finder. I just never use DMR. And like I said, I'd like to have you on the episode when I do it, because I want people that are in all different modes. And I want to just talk about this in an open discussion roundtable. I don't poo-poo on any one of the modes. I just gravitate to D-Star. I think the ICOM radios have it down pat. I never have an issue on D-Star. I'm on D-Star every day. DMR, I've had DMR, and I had a few bugs with it. Maybe things have changed. Maybe I need to revisit DMR. I'm not sure. And then Fusion, I thought was confusing. The confusion. That's what I thought. I had the Yaesu FT1D, FT2D. And I played with the FT3D, FT5D. I played with some of the other digital Yaesu System Fusion C4 FM radios. But it always seemed that those Fusion radios were linked up with DMR, and like you just said, the pictures, I can send pictures from my ICOM radio, from my phone to my ICOM radio across the world over a repeater. And then Fusion, I had the camera mic. I swore I'd never sell it. I always wanted to use it. I couldn't find one person that owned a camera mic. You had to buy an external camera mic. And you couldn't do it over hotspots. I keep hitting this mic here. That's what that noise is. You couldn't do it over hotspots. You had to do it over a repeater. And some people didn't have Yaesu System Fusion repeaters. But D-Star will let you do it over a hotspot. And then DMR, it seemed that, everybody was on DMR, but everybody had a different radio. And I would drop conversations and people would be talking to me. Next thing you know, 15 minutes later, someone comes in and says I interrupted their conversation. They were not there. And I don't know if there's a lot of things. So we'll get into that in another video. If you're listening and you want to hear about D-Star, C4FM, and DMR, and then you're a P25 person, email me at HamRadioConcepts@gmail.com. Please remind me. Tell me, I want to be on an episode. Let's get this episode planned. If you're a D-Star, DMR, C4FM, P25, NXDN, whatever you are, if you're one of those experts or people that like it, let's just not get on there and talk bad to each other. Let's just have an open discussion on all the digital modes. That would be really fun because these hotspots do all the modes, and I'm stuck on one, D-Star, and Colin uses DMR. So HamRadioConcepts@gmail.com. Send me an email. Let's talk about that. So, Colin, in the last 12 minutes we got here on this podcast, I want to shift gears here again because I could talk to you technically because you have a fascination with this stuff and you know what you're doing and you're learning every day. So that is great. Let's go back and shift gears here again to youth because that was really, really what was impressive to me was that you have tell me about what happens with I've seen emails with giveaways or reminders and newsletters on the nets and stuff. Tell me what else you do with it. Why do you do that? Do you think there's going to be more youth in ham radio? Do you have ideas that you want to come up with? Plug your brand again. Tell people how to get in contact with you, how to subscribe, and what people can do to tell their youngins. I say youngins. I don't know where I came up with that word. I mean, I know it's out there, but I don't know why I use that word. What can people do to get their children and youth into the radio hobby, aside from this DMR and all this fun stuff? Go ahead, Colin.
Well, I was just wanting to talk about this. So I was going to explain my group, other groups, and how to get your kids or yourself in amateur radio. So I'll start with my group. So like I said, we started with a net and then I decided to make a group in the Discord server, and then I went and filled out an ARL form and I sent that over to them, and they sent it to the FCC and did all that stuff to get my club license, which, by the way, the call sign for my club is N0DYG. So we have a Discord server. A lot of kids have Discord, not all of them, but quite a few of them have Discord, and so you can connect up with us, and you can connect us with a DMR net. And I'm fixing to start a HF net on April 16th because a lot of my members are getting their general class license around all at the same time, which is really fun. So like I said, we do that, and my email's on the QRZ page. Feel free to ask me anything about our group, and I'll be sure to answer it. And all you have to do, come a member, is give me your call sign. That's optional. If you don't have a call sign or you don't want to give out your call sign, that's fine. And an email, which if you're on Discord and you don't want to share your email either, I can send you everything via Discord. But mainly I have a call sign and an email. And so I want to start with the groups I know about that are out there promoting youth in amateur radio. And the first and the biggest one is Yacht, Young Amateur Communication Ham Team. I want to talk to them. There's a guy, KG8CX Ed, and he runs an Echolink net on a Saturday. Usually they get around 20 to 30 check-ins, and we really connect up as youth together at that net. And that's one way we can connect. And then they actually have a Discord group. They started that just a month or two ago, so they also have that. And so it's mainly a nice net and a Discord server. And They do a lot. It's on Echolink, the yacht conference server. And they do chat sessions Monday through Friday at 7 p.m. Central, and the net's on Saturday, 7 p.m. Central. You can just Google yacht, ham radio, something like that, and something should pop up. So they're a really good group. There's also this thing called YARC, or however you want to pronounce it. YARC. They are a Discord group. They got I think they got hundreds and hundreds of people on that server, and it's mainly Discord only. I think they might have had a net, but I don't know if they have a net much anymore. All I know is that they have a nice Discord server, and people are willing to help out there, from what I've heard. And I don't do much on that server, but other people would probably enjoy that server. Anyways, and so I'm not going to talk much about this club, because the person doesn't want people from all over the world joining. But the CIYAA, Central Iowa Young Amateur Association, and they're a local club, and they have 12, 13 members. I'm not 100% sure, but they are a local club, and they have meetings and stuff like that. They also have a Discord group. All these groups have Discord groups, and so that's a neat little group. And so there's people all over the world promoting youth amateur radio. I almost forgot, but there's if I could remember it. Sometimes I get brain fart. Anyways, there's this really cool, nice program that they have camps. Yoda's what it's called. Youth on the Air, or Youngsters on the Air. They transferred over it to Youth on the Air. But they have camps so you can experience other youth and talk to other youth, along with enjoying ham radio at a summer camp. And I know a lot of people on the yacht net, they said they're going to be doing that, and it's all over the world. They have, I think, over 100 camps, and so that's pretty cool. It's called Yoda, Youth on the Air. They have Poda and Soda. Well, they kind of got it like that. They call it Yoda. And how to promote youth, and how to get youth into amateur radio. Well, I'm not a big fan of fox hunts. I mean, I'll do them. They seem fun, but I'm not like I really, really, really like fox hunts. I haven't done it before, but I should do it sometime. Anyways, so fox hunts are one great way. I know kids really, really, really like fox hunts and finding hidden transmitters. It's like X marks the spot, except with ham radio, basically. And I know youth really like that. You hide a transmitter somewhere and you use Yagis or something to find it out. I need to do that sometime with one of my local clubs. But that's one. Number two is you can talk to the International Space Station. You have someone that loves I can't say the word, but the ISS. If there's kids out there that really like the IAS and everything about space, most of the ISS has ham radio operators, and at certain times, and if you have enough info, research on the computer or phone, whatever, you can talk to astronauts. That's the word, astronauts. In space or orbiting the Earth, and so kids like that as well. And talking to people is another one. Some kids are shy, and other ones really like to talk to people, and that's an interesting thing. And then other people are bored. They don't know what to do. The pandemic got kids bored, and there's a few ham radio operators that I know that are youth that they got into amateur radio mainly because of the pandemic, and they had lots and lots of time to study, and they were bored, and so they got into amateur radio. And that's one of them. And you can advance technology and talk to the most exotic places when you're using remotehamradio.com, or you have an HF radio, or even with DMR and D-Star and stuff like that. DMR is a really good way to get DX. There's this one talk group on Brandmeister. But anyways, I think that's what I have for your questions there.
Man, you're a joy to talk to, Colin. I got to say, I could talk to you forever if it wasn't, trying to be time straight to an hour here. But you said a lot of good things. I was going to ask you if somebody had it. Kids these days are in cell phones and this and that, and they don't get it. And you tell some youth at a camp, like you said, that they could talk to the International Space Station, or I've relayed APRS packets off the space station, or even use the space station repeater. I mean, talk to astronauts. And even satellites. And satellites can be done with a handheld antenna, with a Baofeng radio in your backyard or anywhere you are. You don't have to have. It would cost you a very. You can make your own Yagi that's handheld. You can buy the radio that's cheap. And talk and trying to tell your youth, or getting you and your youth connected again. If your parents and your kids are stuck on cell phones and they're just glued to Facebook or TikTok, get them involved in ham radio. That's what I think. And I'm trying to get. I think my wife, after hearing this episode, my wife's really going to jump into it, because she's been trying. She should know everything I know, because she's heard me talking. She knows what I do on the podcast. She knows when I'm working on satellite. She gets it. I just have to get her involved, because I feel sometimes that I neglect her. I need to get her involved. It would be a very rough situation if me and her were both hams, because if it wasn't me having a package delivered to the front door, she would be the one ordering stuff. Honey, look, I got my new DX Commander antenna. That might make me go broke. that might turn into I would be so excited about that, but at the same time, I might say, "Oh gosh, what have I done?" But before we wrap this up, Colin, we got about 2 minutes to go. I'm going to again say, everybody who's listening, any podcast platform you choose that you listen, search for Ham Radio Concepts podcast if you're listening on shortwave, or if you're on the podcast and you want to try it out and listen on shortwave, give yourself and your kids an amateur radio feeling by going to 9.395 megahertz or 5.95 megahertz every 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time every Sunday. And you'll hear this from WRMI in Okeechobee. Colin, I'll give you like a minute and a half here. Anything you want to say, this is your time. Tell somebody right now before we wrap it up. What do you want to say? Whatever you want. Go.
Well, about the satellites. I'm just getting into satellites. You can use a rubber ducky or an NA771 antenna to do satellites. But I'm just getting into satellites, and I'll probably research some more on that, because I know kids like satellites as well. I know quite a few of them on the yacht net that do satellites and stuff like that. So there's lots of resources. Find out what your kid, or if you're a kid, find out what you like, and then there should be something in amateur radio that's a link to it somehow. Drones. Professional drone pilots, like real professional drone pilots, and I know a lot of them, some of them can use the amateur radio to extend the range. I watched a YouTube video by a Ham Radio Prep on it. I bet you've seen that, about drones. There's this awesome video by, Ham Radio in Action, that explains a lot why you might want to get into amateur radio. Anyways, 73 to everyone, and thanks for listening, and at least talk. I know some people I talk to, they say something like, I tried, or like, I'm trying to get them into amateur radio, but it can sometimes be a slow process. But anyways, 73 to everyone, and take care. This is K0NNK.
Yeah, Colin, definitely. I never try to tell people, hey, you need to do this, but sometimes someone said, well, I thought about it. And if you're listening, you might just need to be there for them. Don't tell them they have to be the radio operator. Be there for them and say, hey, I can give you some information. Again, thanks for my sponsors at HamRadioPrep.com, and you can use the code EricPodcast20 and maybe get started with them and get them the code, give them a Christmas present, a Ham Radio Prep course, and get them started. Maybe they'll find it more fun watching the videos to get licensed instead of telling them, here's a book, read it, and get on the radio. That might be the way to do it. So thank you, Colin, very much, K0NNK, for joining. This has been a pleasure, Colin. I appreciate it so much, and I hope to have you again, my friend. I hope you'll be on that episode with the digital, and you can do some DMR, and you can talk to people that are anti-DMR. Maybe we'll have a whole group discussion. That'd be really cool. 7-3, everybody, for listening. This is episode 11 of the Ham Radio Concepts podcast. More videos and podcasts are on the way. 7-3. This is KJ4YZI.